Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another live with me, Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, at 4 o'clock here on the 22nd of July 2020, reading HV Morton's I Dream of Jeannie. No, I don't. In Search of England, which we shall commence fairly swiftly. Just to say at the beginning of this, I may have to dash out at any moment. My door, as you can see here, is open, and the reason for that, and my front door is open in the house, and the reason for that is I'm expecting a parcel, and they said very conveniently they would deliver between 4 and 5, so it could well happen at any minute. So I'll probably get this sort of hello, and I will leap out. So I just thought I'd explain that in case you suddenly see me whiz away, or if indeed you can hear traffic in the background. So that's a possibility. Also, I'm thinking, it's not yet formulated in my mind, but I'm thinking of doing a separate live show on a Thursday, perhaps just one a week, under the Bald Explorer banner of somebody had said this in an email to me, and I thought it was a great title, Bee in the Bonnet. And they were saying at the moment you've got this farming thing, a bee in your bonnet about it, because I'm speaking about it in my podcast to my patrons, the Naked Englishman. And I thought actually it might be a device to discuss, learn and appreciate. I know nothing about the subject other than what I'm reading. And I thought a stream on the Bald Explorer, another live stream, but in the evenings on Thursdays, because I have that free, although it would be my reading time, to do a live discussion on things that I have a bee in my bonnet about, to do with heritage, landscape and nature. So it's just an idea I'm floating in my head, thinking about it, sharing that idea with you, so that we can all talk, and I could take phone calls and discuss theories, ideas, learn, share knowledge, that sort of thing, talk about books that we're reading on heritage, landscape and nature, if and that, because we don't really have that on the Bald Explorer. We have the Vogue show, which I want to keep as a light-hearted, fun show, showing videos and having just nonsense. And so to take the strand of talking to people but on a semi-serious side of things, I thought that might be quite good for once a week, either at midweek or at the weekend. I haven't really thought, but I've can't be a Monday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, because obviously I'm doing my Bald Explorer, my Vogue show thing. So there we go. Let's find out who's out there and just say a few hellos. Hello to the lovely Julia. Hello to Jeff. To Turbo Stream. And thank you very much, Adrian, for signing up to be a patron, by the way. To Kevin Whiteley, greetings from sunny Blackpool. Oh, I'm glad it's nice and sunny up in Blackpool. To Ballyliffin Brothers, the Ballyliffin Brothers. Hi, hello to you. Steve G, good afternoon to you, sir. Clint Brook, Kevin Smith, I said Turbo Stream. Morton, hello to you. What is the parcel, pray tell? Well, there is, it's from the lovely Jeff, actually. I don't know. I know there's a mysterious something for the lovely Julia, which we will reveal if it arrives on the Vogue show tonight, because the lovely Julia will be here. I also know that there is a graphics card for the computer so that we can do graphics, I suppose. It's just a little bit more powerful. And I think there's a jacket, if I remember rightly, that Jeff said, and maybe some stuff for Kevin, if I've got that right, Kevin Hall. They're the things that I'm imagining is in there, and it should be coming any time. Ed Loud, good afternoon to you. Clint, I say Clint? Oh, from the Stiperstones. Oh yes, that's right. Yes, you're up there on the Stipe. It's lovely up there. What a lovely place to live in Shropshire. Great farming country. Nigel Sadler says it's Richard's birthday next week. It is actually. I suppose it must be. Hadn't really thought about that, actually. It's funny, you get to a certain point and you think, well, It's not that interesting. And Alan Sandell, hello to you, Alan. Lovely. Is that how you pronounce it? Sandell or Sand? It's not Sandal, or is it? My pleasure, Richard. Enjoyed the podcast, for which I agree with the content. Oh, there we go. Varied content you get on a daily basis from the Vobes. It goes under the guise of The Naked Englishman. And the reason it's called The Naked Englishman is, as a podcast, it's very much stripped down. There's no music and jingles and stuff that you get on a lot of other podcasts. It's just switch on the microphone, record something, turn it off. So it's stripped of all fancy stuff. So it's just naked, and it is my thoughts as an English person, and that's why it's called The Naked Englishman. Clint says that would still like to do the Knighton video with you. Yes, I'd still like to do that with you. I'm going to be coming up to Shropshire soon. I need to go. Apparently, my friend Harriet up there has another walk on the Stiperstones to share with me, because she went up a different way. So that would be interesting. There's lots of different ways to get up there. You ain't 21 again. You have been 21 loads of times, says TurboStream. Yeah, maybe I could be 21, something like that. Who knows? It's not a big thing. A show called Rants in His Pants. Well, that could be a title for it. I was rather hoping in this little bit of preamble of 6 minutes of absolute waffle, whilst those people who don't have the chat with me may think, what's this about? I just was hoping that the parcel could have been delivered, and then I could concentrate on the reading. Anyway, we'll crack on, and we'll see. We'll just hope that it'll be fun if the parcel arrives midstream. You'll just see me leap out, down tools. I'm sorry, down tools and nipping out to answer postman. Parcel force it is, actually. So we're in Carlisle at the moment in our search for England with HV Morton. So let's crack on with our reading and see where we go. Would love to join you on the Stiperstones. Yes, well, I'm sure you must know all the routes around the Stiperstones. It's a fantastic area with all the rock. For those that don't know, it's a ridge. It's a ridge on two bits, isn't it? Really, there's a sort of road that crosses it, as I remember, and you've got one bit which has got the main outcrop of volcanic rock, whatever it's called, and it's all scattered around, great big boulders scattered about with this craggy outcrop. And as you go further west, I think towards Wales, you get less of the craggy, and then you just get this lovely long elongated ridge with occasional outcrops. I think there's something called the Devil's Chair. They've all got little names, haven't they, if I remember rightly? And Harriet and I have tended to go on the more craggier side, I think, because it was more dramatic. But we ought to go the other way, which is, I think it's the Welsh side. I can't remember. There's a good pub up there. Oh, right, yeah. It's always nice to go to a good pub. So I was just looking outside in case. Anyway, we'll crack on with a bit of reading and see if, as soon as I start, the parcel force will be, oi, gotta stop that, you're being silly. The rain from Carlisle to Newcastle. It swooped down from the north in great blown sheets, and it swept up from the south and met the northern sheets in mid-air above the wall, where they fought in criss currents and fell together, lashing the earth. Every few miles I left the car by the wayside and plodded over soggy fields to spot the wall, which you can trace almost without a break for 73 miles. At Housted's I stood thrilled to the marrow. I've seen Pompeii and I've seen Timgad in Africa, but to see this great Roman monument in our own cold northern lands, that wall was the north boundary wall of the Roman Empire. At this place it runs 6 foot high for over 25 miles. You can walk on it. Actually, they don't encourage you to walk on it. I walked on it, and then I think somebody told me off. How it scorns the lie of the land. It marches on straight as a Roman road where possible, then, wherever there is a hill, the wall climbs it. It commands all the high ground from Newcastle to Carlisle. To the north is a deep trench, to the south another trench and a military road. The Roman wall across England is the most marvellous engineering enterprise in the country, and it is time that the Office of Works took charge of it and made it a guarded ancient monument. It's interesting. So in 1920s, I guess it was just there. Now it is, I guess, a guarded ancient monument, but is it English heritage that looks after it? The weather is rotting it slowly. Miles of it should be cemented to stop decay. There are years of excavation along its course, for you can hardly dig anywhere without finding pottery or bones. I stood wet through the Chesters and went over the ruin. Chester is nowhere near them. What's he talking about? I stood wet through the Chesters and went over the ruins of one of the largest forts in the wall. Silurum, it was called, when the second Asturian cavalry were stationed there. Foundations of the gates are to be seen. In the north gates, the socket holes for the hinges are preserved. On either side are the guard houses. The prefect or colonel lived in superior qualities with a view of the Tyne. He had a bathroom and a heated sitting room. In the centre of the fort stood a colonnaded forum. The stone gutter, which took the rain drippings from the roof, is still there. It was still full of rain. There are a lot of ruts of chariot wheels in the stone pavements, 3 foot 6 inches from wheel to wheel, the same size as the chariot ruts in Pompeii. Underground is a vaulted chamber in which were found a rotten wooden chest and a pile of Roman coins, evidently the regimental pay chest. Round the central buildings are the barrack quarters for about 300 troopers. Near the river are the regimental baths. Can you hear all the noise outside, by the way? Can you hear the traffic and the odd pedestrian perambulating past the Vobes Towers? They do get very close down. Some of them venture down the mile-long drive to the house, which is very irritating. My footman is usually hidden in a hedge with a blunderbuss, but today he's got the day off. Would love to join you on the Stiper Stones. Yes, looking forward to today's description of Hadrian's Wall. Oh, here we go. Yes, started already, as you've noticed. You can tag Richard in a comment by using the @ sign with no spaces and then Richard Vobes or @Richard Vobes. Yes, if you do that, as Julia says, you'll get my attention if you desperately want it, which is great. Was that the letterbox? What the letterbox? The parcel is, I imagine it's going to be a box of so big. You go to the Bog Centre. Oh, yes, out on the Stiper. Yes, you go to the Bog Centre on the Stipertones when you walk it. Yeah, that's where I've gone. It's a fascinating place. Just to pause for a moment. The Bog Centre, because there's mining. It was mining country, wasn't it? And I forget the reason why it's called the Bog, but there is a perfectly good reason. Although, notably, there is no toilet. Asturian cavalry. Asturias in the northwest Spain. They must have been Spanish cavalry. Oh, right. Chester's, says Turbo, is one of the forts along the wall, same as the Housesteads. Oh, and Vindelander. Oh, right. Okay, thanks for that. Because it's only because he'd just come from Chester. That's why I was thinking he'd gone through the Chesters, as in, villages in Cheshire. But I thought that was what he was referring to. But thank you for the general knowledge of which I am lacking. Where did I get to? The wall near the river are the regimental baths. Is that where I got to? I think so. Yes. The wall links up with... Did I read that? Oh, yeah, no, I haven't. The wall links up with Silurnum on the east and leaves the little fort on the west to run over the hills. This fort has more gates than any other station on the wall. It has 6, 3 of which open to the north of the wall or into enemy country. This has puzzled antiquities. Collingwood Bruce says that he supposes that the extra gates opening into no man's land were simply because Silurnum was larger than the other stations. I suggest another theory. This was a cavalry depot. Any man who has done any cavalry training will realise that when the Picts attacked the wall, the first thought of this garrison would be to mount, draw swords, and get outside the wall as quickly as possible. They could swing round through through 3 gates upon the Picts, wheel into line, and deliver a charge in about 3 minutes. This, I think, is why Silurnum has more gates than the infantry forts, and why they open to the north. Oh, you see, because he's an ex-trench man from the First World War. How little imagination it takes to see the wall as it was, an 18-foot-high barrier from sea to sea, a tower or pillbox every mile, and dotted along the length stone fortresses garrisoned by cohorts, and alas. And behind each fort grew up villages where the married quarters were, villages with shops and workshops and temples. It's strange to think that for 300 years the nations of Europe formed a defensive crust along the north of England. A defensive crust. I love it. Where I've lost my space. The regular army was at York and Chester, but the wall was in the hands of the territorials or auxiliary legions, recruited wherever Rome had made conquests. Here, in the blinding rain and in the winter snows, were shivering Moors from Africa, men from Spain, from the forests of Germany, of France and Belgium. All Europe and parts of Africa helped to defend England for 300 years. Is that true, do you suppose? Is that really true? I suppose, they gathered their troops from wherever. No doubt in time, these foreign legions were alien in name only. When drafts didn't come from the distant islands, I imagine that the villages behind the forts gave many British recruits to the Eagles. The crumbling walls of Silurnum are covered with a pretty crimson-purple rock plant, whose name is, I think, Ernest alrinus. It's probably a South European plant. The legend, which I believe some learned man has contradicted, is that this tiny flower came over from Spain with fodder for the chargers of the second Allah of Asturians. Asturians. I left the ruins of Chester's and saw the hall of Hadrian, and saw the wall of Hadrian lying from sea to sea, firm and straight as a legion, with linked shields. I lifted my voice and shouted, Ave Caesar! And there was no answer but the drip of the rain. Ave Caesar, as opposed to Hail Caesar. A-V-E, Ave Caesar. Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? Let's have a look, see what you're saying. Chester is one of the forts along... Oh, yes, I read that. The regiment of cows to protect Vobes Hall. That's what I need. You're quite right. There were smaller posts every mile, so to repel the barbarians to the north. Yeah, when Julia and I went up and had a look at the wall, it was fascinating to see elements of it, the bits that were there. And we went to... I made a video which is called... Wasn't Julia remember the Sycamore Gap? That's it. Sycamore Gap. If you go into... if you put YouTube and go Vobes Sycamore Gap, you'll get the video. It's a nice little video, actually, of our little trip to Sycamore Gap, where I believe they filmed the Robin of Sherwood film, or one of them. And it's obviously not supposed to be Hadrian's Wall, but it's a famous bit. And there are a lot of wall up there to look at. Need to do more of the wall. Ed Loud says, the point is I was making the other day that Roman soldiers did not all come from Italy. Oh, yes, there you go. And as he says, they've come from all over the place. Thanks, Ed. Alan Sandell says, yes, troops from all over the empire probably had 250 different countries with different troops. Morton says, did the Picts go extinct, or did they descend into modern-day Scotland? Do you know, I don't know too much about the Picts. I assume that they all went underground. I mean, they seem armed with enough shovels and picks. 250,000 troops. Oh, 250,000 troops to defend the empire. Wow. What, just stationed in England, you mean? I'm writing beside the River Wear, surrounded by flies, small winged dragons, and minute centipedes, which paddle dreary through the ink before route marching all over the paper. It's a beautiful... You can imagine him, can't you? You can imagine him sitting there with a little ink pot and some table that he's erected out of the back of his little car, his open sports car type thing, whatever it is, like an open MG or whatever he is driving. I can't remember whether he told us what it was. With his luggage strapped on the back, parked up on the countryside. You can just picture him, can't you? With a big trilby hat or a big wide-brimmed hat of something, pipe in mouth. Just a beautiful image, really. Pipe in mouth. I wish pipes didn't give you cancer. I would love to smoke a pipe. I would just, and not only be antisocial and stuff, but you can get some lovely aromatic tobacco, or you used to be able to, and puff away there as he's sitting there scribbling with a fountain pen, not a quill obviously, but a fountain pen, and watching these centipedes crossing his notebook on his paper. It's just a lovely image. Anyway, it's a beautiful day. I went with passionate sincerity to do nothing except to lie back and continue to look at one of the finest sights in Europe. High on a red sandstone hill, lifted like a challenge above the head of the smallest trees, stands Durham Castle. Behind the battlement walls, which are built sheer on the cliff's edge, rise the lonely red-brown towers of Durham's Norman Cathedral. Durham Castle crowns its hill like an armoured knight, and the city of Durham crowds round Durham Hill, a tight mass of houses and a main street no wider than a country lane, clustering round the fortified height as serfs might cling to the baron's keep for protection. Durham is in appearance as feudal as His Majesty's Tower of London. What a sight for a castle and a church! To sit beside this wide, slow river and look up at the hill is to see Norman England. I have been to Durham, actually, but it was on a corporate video job many years ago. I didn't have time to appreciate it. I just saw it as I drove through. It was such a shame. How much romance, beauty and drama can be skipped over by a guidebook. As I was standing behind the high altar of Durham Cathedral earlier in the day, I saw a large platform with one word carved in the stone: Cuthbertus. The guidebook says, "In the place of honour behind the high altar is the tomb of St. Cuthbert, who died AD 687. The body still rests below." Now, as I read this bald truth, my imagination went on a long journey. At the end of a tunnel of time, 1,239 years ago, I saw a strange England, and I saw the hill of Durham before its great Norman church was built, before the stone Saxon church was built, before the first little reed chapel was built. Just a woody hill of red sandstone with perhaps a speckled fawn standing in the fern. The roots of Durham go back to an England difficult to see, an England wild, bloody, savage, an England which prayed to Wotan and Thor in the ruins of Roman temples, an England beautiful at this time beyond words, because, caring nothing for the clash of kingdoms on kingdom, the sound of swords and the trail of fire, Christ was walking through English meadows humbly as he walked through Galilee. The legions of Rome had returned with shaven heads bearing not a sword, but a message. Men have done deeds in the name of God which would have made Christ weep. But the story of the conversion of England to Christianity, with which Durham is so marvellously linked, is, I believe, one of the loveliest stories since the New Testament. Look back to a time long before the Council of Whitby, and you see the pilgrim monks tramping the weed-grown Roman roads to speak to men and women under an oak tree in a wood. These simple holy men trudged the heather, traversed the mighty woods, and crossed the lonely hills to baptize the heathen Saxon beside wells and at the edge of streams. They were uplifted by a magnificent single-mindedness, inspired with a Christ-like humility, strengthened by a superb sincerity. How real a thing in those rough days was the brotherhood of the holy men. I've always loved the touchingly humble manner in which the venerable Bede implored the monks of Lindisfarne to receive him as their little household slave. What a picture this awakens in the mind. You see the bearded, tawny kings of Saxon England sitting, sword on their knees, listening like children to the story of Christ. It was so often the queen and not the monk who converted the king. And slowly the wild old gods, Wotan and Thor, left nothing behind them but the names Wednesday and Thursday as they crept into the twilight before the coming of the light. The hermit monks rested together in lonely places, and you see the first monastery. When St. Cuthbert died in the holy isle of Lindisfarne, he told his monks that if the pirates came again, they must promise to bear his body with them wherever they might go. In 870, the longboats of the Danes were beached on the northeast coast, and the monks of Lindisfarne, faithful to their word, took flight, carrying with them the body of St. Cuthbert, and in the same coffin the head of St. Oswald. They journeyed through South Scotland and North England, where the many old churches dedicated to St. Cuthbert mark, no doubt, their resting places. After 8 years' wandering, they settled near Durham and Chester-le Street. Here, for over 100 years, the body of the saint was undisturbed. Then the Danes came again. Once more the faithful monks bore their coffin away, and finally, in 995, they came to the Red High Cliff at Durham, and there they built over the sacred body, a little wattle church. They built a wooden church and then a stone one. Into this stone church, it is said, King Canute walked barefoot to the shrine of St. Cuthbert. So Durham forms out of these fair mists as a man stands. So Durham forms out of these far mists as a man stands beside the tomb in the dim light behind the altar. Durham Cathedral. I have no emotion greater than this in any cathedral. This building is not magnificent, it's stupendous. It is the most wonderful Norman church I've ever seen, not excepting the great church of St. Stephen at Caen. In order to understand it, you must realise how and when it was built, and to understand Durham Cathedral is to understand a number of other things which have nothing to do with religion. In 1069, 3 years after the conquest, William the Conqueror sent a Norman follower to be Earl of Northumbria. The men of Durham promptly slew him and his troops. This led to an appalling reign of terror in the north of England. William and his cavalry went through the north like a cyclone. They systematically stamped out life between Durham and York. They left behind them a country of charred ruins. After this cruel display of authority, Durham Cathedral rose up on its hill under Norman chisels, its great nave, upheld by giant stone columns, was built by the notorious Flambard. It is, with the exception of the Hypostyle Hall in the great temple of Karnak in Egypt, the most awe-inspiring temple I've ever seen. It seemed to me as I stood near the west door of Durham and looked at this vast dim church, whose pillars are like giant oaks, whose arches are austere, whose sanctuaries are built as if to withstand a siege, that this building is a declaration of Norman policy. I almost heard the voice of the conqueror ringing down the nave. Look at this church. I have conquered England, and in England I intend to stay. When you pray here, remember how I went with fire and sword through the north to punish you. I am very strong. That, so it seems to me, is the message of Durham Cathedral. It is proof in stone of the strong new blood that had come to England. I stood a long time on that tomb behind the high altar. I must tell you that St. Cuthbert, like many of the earlier saints, hated women. There is a line of dark frostery marble in the nave of Durham, beyond which no woman was allowed to pass. Even after his death, St. Cuthbert hated women because when in 1175 Bishop Pudsey began building the Lady Chapel at the east end of the church just behind the tomb of the saint, strange cracks appeared in the walls, which the bishop took as an omen that the saint did not like the chapel, even to the Virgin so near him. That is why Durham has its Lady Chapel, called the Galilee, at the west end. I could write you another story about this beautiful building, which is like an Eastern mosque. The men who built it had been to the Crusades. I could also write about the grotesque sanctuary knocker on the cathedral door below the north porch. When the sound of that knocker rang through the church, 2 monks, who were always stationed in the north porch, used to run down and admit whoever knocked and led him to the sanctuary, from which, no matter how terrible his crime, no man might drag him. But it grows late, and I am bothered by mosquitoes. I look up at that lovely rock with its church, whose roots go back to the first English Christians. An odd little irrelevance creeps into my mind. As I stood beside the tomb of the saintly woman-hater earlier in the morning, I watched the pretty feet of 3 American girls walking over his grave, but they made practically no noise. They were wearing low-heeled shoes of plaited leather. so time takes revenge, even on saints. That's the end of that little section. Still no parcel. Just going to have a look out the door, I don't suppose, for a moment. No, nothing. Let's have a look at the comments and see what people have been saying. I've been to Sycamore Gap and to Vindolanda. Yeah, we didn't go to Vindolanda. We kept seeing signs to it, Turbo. Ed says 250,000 for the whole empire. That's not many. They just shuffle them around to hotspots. They must have had more for the whole empire. I would have thought that's just for England, isn't it? Alan Sandell says the whole empire was huge, couldn't last. Oh, huge cost, couldn't last. Yes, if everyone rebelled at the same time, game over. Graham Cass says there was even a Scotland before. Was there even a Scotland before the wall? Well, I suppose it wasn't the Scots. It must have been Pictland at that time. Perhaps I don't know too much about Scottish history. I guess because I live so far south, Scotland seems so far away. When I used to see Harriet, because Shrewsbury, where she lives, nudges on to Wales, I was quite fascinated with a bit of Welsh history, because Shrewsbury is 15 miles from the border, and at one time the border was, well, wherever the Welsh wanted it to be, really, up as far as the River Severn, and it would change, and the Romans would chase them back, and then the Normans would chase them back, and then Edward the First, I think he had dealings with them, and I think Henry the Fifth also had dealings with them. I'm sure all the kings had some sort of dealings with, but they're the ones I remember. Ben Reeve says perhaps a vaping pipe rather than an e-cigarette could be made real. Yes, a vaping pipe, I suppose. Puff, puff. I mean, I wouldn't do it now, of course, unless it was in a film. The Romans lost several thousand at Teutoburger Forest, and that was only one defeat, says Morton. I went in February, says Turbo, and wondered what it would be like as a Roman soldier on a bleak winter's day. Yes, I turned back when the weather closed in. No stamina there, Adrian. No stamina at all. You should have stood erect, with pike in hand, repelling the Americans as they came traipsing in their, what did he call them? In their plaited leather shoes. Fiona, hello everyone. Been busy in the garden collecting veg for dinner. Oh, sounds lovely. We'll be round. If Thursday is Thor, what is Tuesday? Oh yeah, that's a good one. Good question. I love Northumberland coast. I've been to the Holy Island too. The lovely Julia and I want to go to Lindisfarne at some juncture. My wife's ashes were scattered on the Holy Island. Oh, blimey. Are you allowed to do that? We've done it, obviously, but presumably you had. Lovely place to end up. It boggles the mind to think of all the history on our shores, doesn't it? It is a mind-boggling thing. Jeff says there's a rarity, an American who doesn't make a noise. Oh, yes, there's an American who doesn't make a noise. Good. I would like my ashes to be in Butcher's Grove, where the bluebells bloom. Oh, lovely. Damo. Hello, Damo. Yes, the Scots invaded Pictland from Northern Ireland. Oh, did they? Where were the Picts then? The Scots invaded Pictland from so the Picts were at Northern Ireland. Oh, okay, yeah. Very few Pictish text exists. Quite literally, their history is mostly pictorial. Like it. Right, how are we doing? Yeah, well, let's crack on. I might just have a slurp. Hope this parcel arrives after all this. If you're interested in old things, in beautiful things, and in the history of this country, there is one city which will exceed your expectation. Any guesses where that might be? If you're interested in old things, in beautiful things, and in the history of this country, there is one city which will exceed your expectation. Where do you suppose he's thinking? I'll give you a moment because there's always a bit of a delay. By the way, if you're enjoying all of this, give us a thumbs up, would you? Much appreciated. A third of you have, which is lovely. Further up there is the Antonine Wall, the fourth, and Clyde Canal following its line. Morton says York. Is it York? Any other guesses other than York? Is it Bradford? No other guesses? Go on, have a guess. Second York, says Turbo Stream. Go on, there must be another one who will have a guess. Thank you for the extra likes, by the way. Much appreciated. One more guess. Go on, let's see if it'll pop up. I agree, York, says Alan Sandell. Well, let me tell you. York is the correct answer. I entered York with a mind full of misconceived ideas, and at this moment I feel, rather fatuously, that I have discovered York. I'm thrilled to the spine to find not a great bustling capital of the north, but a peaceful, astonishingly beautiful medieval town whose oversailing houses are encircled by white turreted city walls, which are 100 times more interesting than the walls of Chester. York is too good to be true. It is, to me, incredible that a great city which marches through English history to the sound of trumpets and cathedral bells and the beating of drums should not have disfigured itself with gasworks and factories. York is the lovely queen, as London is the powerful king of English cities. Why did I expect York to out Newcastle? In the south of England, we suffer from a false idea of the manufacturing north. It is almost within the times of our grandfathers that the coal fields of the north became more important than the cornfields of the south, and we, having perhaps seen Sheffield from the train, one of England's saddest sights, imagine that a northern city must, in the nature of things, be an ugly one. The commercial prominence of those recent giants, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, Bradford and Halifax, blinds us to the real north, which, apart from these areas of dense population, remains, as has always been, one of the most historically romantic and naturally beautiful divisions of England. It's interesting to note that the Industrial Revolution has passed over such ancient aristocrats as Lancashire, Durham and York. It is remarkable that Lancashire, which possesses Liverpool and Manchester, should own a delicious, sleepy old county town like Lancaster. And this in itself is symbolic of the fact that the great industrial, new rich cities of northern England, vast and mighty as they are, fall into perspective as mere black specks against the mighty background of history and the great green expanse of fine country which is the real north of England. As for Yorkshire, it is not a county, it is a country. It is the grand old Northumbria of Saxon England. I could find enough in Yorkshire to keep my hasty pen busy day by day for a year, and that is why I must fly from it as I flew from Cornwall. Leeds, Sheffield and Bradford are three small circles in a land of abbeys, churches, castles, wild moorland and heavenly dales, unchanged in parts since that time when the first monks went through Northumbria with the first crucifix. I walk round the wall of York, which really looks like a town wall, rejoicing in this peerless city. York is not conspicuous of its beauty like so many ancient towns. It is too old and wise and too proud to trick itself out for the admiration of tourists. I'm not sure that that's true today. That is one of the many reasons why I love it, and its little country town streets and its country town hotels, called after the name of the proprietor. Here are no Majestics or Excelsiors, but plain Browns and Joneses and Robinsons. York, Rome and London. Those are, I think, the three most powerful place names in Europe. They ring with authority. There is rock-like assurance and reliability in the sound of them, which is woefully lacking in such names as Paris, Berlin and Brussels. The street names of York are so eloquent that no words of mine can better describe the flavour of this ancient city. Listen to them. Gillygate, Fossgate, Shambles, Spurriergate, Good Ramgate, Coppergate, Swinegate, Oglethorpe, Tanner's Moat, Palmer's Lane, Aldwalk. You don't need any further description from the old streets that run within the walls of York. I don't think so. I was amused to find that York has a street called Piccadilly. From a distance, York Minster dominates the city. It prints its magnificence on the eye and on the memory. Its exterior is magnificent. Its interior is England's most triumphant anticlimax. No work of man could live up to the grandeur of those twin towers above the perfect west porch in the great Peter, the biggest bell of England, takes hourly stock of the time. Sorry, I misread that. No work of man could live up to the grandeur of those twin towers above the perfect west porch, in which Great Peter, the biggest bell in England, takes hourly stock of time. I went round behind a guide with a crowd of Americans. Americans know more about York than we do. I wish more English people took the same anxious interest in our antiquities. There is only one fool in the party, an elderly and obviously too wealthy woman with a silver-headed cane, who asks more idiotic questions than I have ever heard in half an hour, culminating with, "Say, guide, do you have an Archbishop of York these days?" Her knowledge may have been naked, but it was unashamed. The glory of York Minster is the glory of its glass. It is said to contain 2/3 of the 14th century glass in England. The guide told us how many acres it would cover. I lost him and the Americans when I saw the Five Sisters window. This window is the queen among windows, a tall, slender, mellow poem in glass, for which I have no words. No words can describe it. It must be seen. And I could stand on the wall of York at sunset with all these men and women who have written to tell me that they love the beauty and the history of England. The sun sinks below the featureless plain right in the eye of the west porch of the Minster. I stood on the white wall and saw it dip lower in grey clouds and spirals of flame. Small pink clouds sailed above, with the little leaded panes of glass in the west window, shimmered like red gold scales. This beautiful old city, how any Londoner must love it. London and York sprang from the same mother. Eboracum, Londonium, two cities of the eagles. The streets of York have seen so much. No wonder they doze with half-shut eyes. They have seen the Roman lictors clear the way for Hadrian. 2 Caesars died at York. It was here that the Emperor Severus came in AD 210 after his campaign in the north, a poor, broken, miserable master of the world, hiding his swollen limbs in a silk litter. Among his generals rode his own son, who was waiting for him to die. They say that birds of ill omen cried on the gates of York when the Caesar passed in, broken in mind but not in spirit, for he is said to have quelled a mutiny from his litter. When the miserable mutineers knelt before him, he raised himself on the cushions and, pointing to his swollen limbs, said, "It is the head and not the feet which commands." I would like to have heard the dying master of the world say that. Trumpets blew and shields were beaten when Constantine the Great was proclaimed Emperor of York. How strange to think that Yorkshire sheep once gazed up from the grass to hear a great shout, "Ave Caesar!" from the walls as another master took the purple and went to his destiny. The clouds wheel in colourful splendour over York. In the crypt of the minster, hidden away in the dark, is a well. This well lay there before the great cathedral was built. The cathedral was, in fact, built to cover this well. The first cathedral of York was a wooden chapel erected over this well for the baptism on Easter Day, AD 627, of King Edwin of Northumbria and all his court. Now the sun sets. The face of the minster is washed by a pink flush from the west. In a few moments, the quiet dusk will be stealing through the streets of York, and Great Peter will solemnly tick another hour from the slate of eternity, from the slate of In a few moments, I'll just read that last line again because I fluffed it like nobody's business. In a few moments, the quiet dusk will be stealing through the streets of York, and Great Peter will solemnly tick another hour from the slate of eternity. And there we come to the end of that section. Love York. Yorkshire Tourist Board actually say welcome to God's country, do they? Everybody says that these days. York has gone a bit ye old. I was there last time, came back 4 years ago. Oh, Nigel said I was hoping to visit York next week, but got outvoted. We're going to Caen. All right, fair dues. They charge a fortune to look at the Minster. Top tip, go to a service and it's free. Good tip. They Whip Hoop Mar Gate is one of the ginnels, I remember, would be called a twitten here in Sussex. Oh, right. Oh, okay. Whoop Mar. Nigel says the Great West Window has the area of a tennis court. Golly. I want to go back there only for one day and only to see the National Rail Museum, says Ben, and outside the cathedral, plus a few hours with mates who volunteer at Elvington Airfield. If that's Normandy, as in D-Day Normandy, I'm jealous. Yeah, it's the same Normandy. Jackie Traynor, climbed to the top of the Minster. My legs were shaking at the top. Yeah, golly. I bet it's nice and tall. Morton says Boris has suggested moving the government to York when Whitehall Houses of Parliament are refurbished. Well, I think that's a sensible suggestion. Keep them away from the south as much as possible. There they can do no harm, presumably. And also we can send the Danes on them. Be jealous then, Jeff. Hopefully we can catch the sun on D-Day beaches. Yes, that would be good, as long as you're not strifed with anything. Ben says the Rail Museum is incredibly big. HV Morton has a grand job of describing York that knows. An 8-inch by 2-inch 9th century Viking turd, a 8 inches by 2, blimey, was discovered in York, the largest ever excavated. Not many people know that. Not many people probably wanted to know that, but there we go, 8 inches by 2. Sean James Cameron watching from inside the BBC, the Biased Broadcasting Corporation. We are on a tea break Nice colour coordination with the book and tracksuit. Oh yeah, it's it's what? It's not a tracksuit. It's just a hoodie tracksuit. We'll catch up when it's uploaded. Top man. Nigel says, top tip for visiting York Viking Centre. Arrive 15 minutes before closing. You'll walk straight in without any wait, normally about an hour or so. You get the full tour. Gosh, we'll have to do that. Turbo Stream, another fine reading. Richard, they close an hour earlier, says Nigel. Hey, bit late again, but I'm here. Good to see you, Andrew. I will finish there. My parcel hasn't arrived, so it hopefully will arrive in the next 5 minutes. Or I'll go and track the parcel on the special tracker. But anyway, there we go. How interesting is all of that? Very interesting. Just so that you know, we are... Yeah, we only got about a fifth of the book to go. This is going to be the next book, The Wisdom of the Fields by H.J. Massingham, which I'm just taking bites out to make sure it's interesting. I think it is. As I said at the beginning, also, I'm thinking of doing a show. It's either going to be on a Thursday, possibly at the weekend, not sure. Another live stream for the Bald Explorer called something like Bee in the Bonnet or Rants in My Pants, in which we discuss a subject, a heritage, landscape and nature and that sort of thing, and have conversations, phone calls and all of that in a semi-serious way, more serious than semi, but and keep the Vogue show to a fun, jolly old nonsense thing. Keep the reading going as much as we can. And also, finally, just to let you know that from the 1st of August for about 5 days, I shall be away in Wiltshire on my own, doing some walks and filming, but I'm hoping to do some live shows whilst away. May not get the reading done in the afternoon, but hope to do. They might do readings in the evenings because I shall be on my own, on my lonesome Todsome. So just to let you know that I'm going to be away on the first of this year's travels, which is a bit of a shame. But anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you very much. If you've enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. Very kind of you. And I will catch up with you if you want to watch the Vogue show tonight. That's great. Tomorrow, another slightly light-hearted trip with Ringer Ollie. We did 2 videos yesterday, so the second one will be going out tomorrow. And if all goes well, I am looking at a bit of woodland with Whiston estate manager, I think he is. Something like that. Anyway, take care and talk to you soon. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.